Why Afrobeats? I think to explain it, I have to backtrack a bit. So I grew up as a teenager listening to hip-hop, almost exclusively. And what drew me to hip-hop was really the beats, largely the beats. That's what got me to DJ, and later on, because I was into beats more than anything, I started to be into, I had a phase when I was into techno, house, but also Brazilian music, some old school fela. Like I was listening to a lot of stuff, but always it was the beats. But I would say hip-hop was huge, electronic music was also quite big. And what happened is, as a DJ, I felt like I reached a point where I was familiar enough with the music I liked that I was no longer really appreciating the innovation in that music. I started to find the music actually less interesting to me. So what happened is I started to go back in time. And that was also frustrating because I was like, I'm not a historian, I'm not a collector of old records, and I want to be listening to the current stuff. And out of the blue, it's like bam, Kuduro pops up on my radar. That was like 2006. I discovered Kuduro. So Kuduro is a style of music from Angola. The production is very simple. It's very percussive. There's usually no melody or almost no melody. There's literally just, it's a beat, right? So the only bass is going to be like a huge kick drum or a huge tom drum. It was raw. Guys rap on it, so it had like that hip hop side. The beats were nuts, kind of like techno, so it had that techno side. But for me, the rhythms were much more interesting. So I was immediately drawn to it. Around the same time, I also discovered back then it was called hip life, right? Or that was kind of the predominant term. But so this idea of also fusing hip hop, like guys rapping, with like, let's say, digitally produced beats. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it. Beats produced in the same way, let's say, as hip hop or techno. Plus, this ingredient that for me was both familiar and new. Familiar because it just felt natural. But it was new because I'd never heard of it, which is, the actual, like the Ghanaian print, let's say the high life side to it. So I was working for a distribution company. I was able to come to Ghana, and from then I've just been more and more into it. But basically, I really feel like Afrobeats, to go back to your question, combines a lot of influences that are dear to me. It has kind of, first of all, the rhythms are very interesting, like I think richer than most music we listen to. As a DJ, I love dance music, so I can appreciate the danceability. And it also has kind of that urban, maybe not hip-hop, but let's say urban edge that I've also grown up appreciating. So it's the combination of everything. And it's far more musical, I find, than a lot of the music I was drawn to before. Like I find that the melodies are more catchy, and it's just easier to get into. So it kind of combines everything I like in music. So music is definitely the reason why I stayed in Ghana. It's the reason I came to Ghana in the first place, and it's definitely the reason why I decided to stay here. Of course, it happened in increments, little by little. Maybe this is not the time and place to tell my whole story, but it was definitely the music that made me want to stay here, and that made me want to come here and stay here and open a studio and work with artists and just try to develop, cherish, monetize, market, distribute, license this music, do anything I can, use my skills to any avail to push the music, because I really do believe in it. I think it's the best. So I hear people talking about the rise of Afrobeats a lot, and I think, one of the first believers in it. But to be honest, today I don't see it that way. I think what's happening now is there has been some level of democratization in the way music is made, right? It's the access. It used to be you had to go in a very expensive studio to record music, and those studios only existed in a number of cities. So if you weren't there, then it was difficult to create music for the broad popular market. But that has changed, right? You can go to almost any bedroom now and you'll have a studio, which maybe not the best ever, but you can still achieve like pretty cool stuff. So I think now that means you can be anywhere in the world and create music that's relevant, right? Well, where the quality is there, and because also people have access to music from a lot of places, you can kind of you can choose where you want to fit, right? But I feel that there's still a lot remaining to be done. And when people talk about Afrobeats taking over, actually I think it's just not true. Take for instance Dominican Dembo, right? Dominican Republic is minuscule. I don't know the population, but I'm assuming it's less than 15 million. So that's 10 times less than Nigeria. But their videos get 10 times more views than Nigerian videos. You can see a Dembo video, and the music is not even I mean, maybe it's a matter of opinion, but I don't think it's better or more interesting or easier to get into than Nigerian music. But they're getting, you know, 400 million views, 500 million views, whereas P Square, you know, a massive hit will have 50 million. So for me, there's still a significant gap, which I don't necessarily see it as a negative thing. I'm like, no, we're only scratching the surface. Like, there's a lot more to be done and a lot more market share to gain. And I do think, for me, that is where things are going, and it's inevitable. As I mentioned a bit earlier, I just think the music is, I honestly think it's superior. I think it's more catchy. I think the melodies are awesome. I don't mean to like simplify too much, but in countries where it's part of the culture to dance, I think it's natural that making dance music it's just going to be more competitive and better, you know? When you have societies where people don't dance and they make dance music, I think there's something in the core that is just not really that easy to achieve. You know, I'm not saying you can't make dance music if you didn't grow up dancing, but it's less likely. And I'm also not saying everyone here dances, but it's definitely more presence, you know? So I just think from that perspective, people here have a great advantage. I think African music has a big time advantage for being danceable. And if you look at the music that's charting worldwide, a lot of it is dance music or danceable music. Well, I think definitely musically, I'm assuming it's easier now maybe to reach an audience, whatever music it is you do. I think now there's ways to reach an audience that could be kind of disseminated around the world, right? No matter what you do, whether it's Afrobeats or whether it's something that maybe wouldn't fit in the Afrobeats category but contains maybe some of the same ingredients. For instance, I work with Gafachi around the Joa project. I don't know if we would call his music Afrobeats, even though it is beats and there's definitely an Afro influence. But definitely, I'm sure the fact that Afrobeats is big is helping him reach new people, new DJs, it's definitely opening things up. So I think naturally, in a way, without having to do anything, the door basically is a bit more open than it used to be. I would say on the other side, I've sensed that there's a certain musical normalization of Afrobeats. Like there's a certain idea of, oh, this is how it should sound, right? So there's trends, very quick trends. And I feel, for instance, Mr. Easy came up, and Mr. Easy and Jules, because Jules was instrumental, came up with Skin Tight Bankulais, or Bankulai Skin Tight rather. And that, in a way, shifted the game. And now you listen to half of these Nigerian songs, they sound like Bankulais and Skin Tight. I mean, I'm exaggerating a bit, but you know what I mean? Like, similar tempo, similar themes, similar melodies, similar instrumentation, like kind of more minimal, talking about love, and slower tempo, right? Around 100 BPM. So the risk is, you can see that that works. That doesn't mean that that's what you should be doing, you know? Do it if that's what speaks to you, that's what you want to create as an artist. But, I think people should see Afrobeats as a very broad matrix, and then you need to fill in the boxes your own way, and not necessarily the way that you think the format dictates, I think that's the beauty of Afrobeats is it's a very broad and loose term, and I think every artist can kind of turn it to their advantage by bending its rules a bit and by shifting it a little bit in the direction that they want to take it. And again, to talk about Joa, I think that's what he's doing, right? He's not following the typical recipe, but he is using some of the same rhythms, some of the same sounds, but he's doing something different with it. So I think that, for me, that's the best part. That's that you can actually do that now and you'll probably get somewhere just because you're part of this kind of big wave going in this positive direction. A great song in itself is not significant. A great song is significant to get you somewhere, but that's not the end of the road, right? So you should see this song as an accelerator to get to somewhere where you want to be, but don't see it as your goal, you know what I mean? So once that's said, I think for artists, as in for producer, I think the objective is the same. It's just to establish your name, show that you're able to make good music, and convince people that, to want more of your music. So if it's a producer, other artists will want to work with you. If it's an artist, you're just hoping that more and more radios and TV shows and DJs will play your music. People sometimes will say it's just a money game, and that, once you have a dope song, if you don't have money, then you can't push it because people won't play it. Of course, money helps, but money is not everything. And if you have a dope song, people will want to play it just because music is music. And if you can convince people that your song is great, it'll just play. of course, there's ways to make that easier or harder, right? For me, it's very important for an artist or a producer to have local support. Start with the people around you. If your friends, family, neighborhood people are not behind you, it's going to be tough to expand. If you can't convince people who know you personally to listen to your music, why would people in another part of town or another country listen to you? I think it's fundamental to nurture that, first level of support. For instance, I remember I met Stoneboy in 2010. At the time, he called himself Stoneboy Berneton. He was unknown, but in Dansoman, he was, I won't say a rock star, but everyone knew him. And I remember I was like, wow, okay. He was young guy, humble, hardworking, modest, he was trying to get in, but he wasn't in yet. But in DC, he was. And I'm not surprised to see that 8 years later, the guy's on top of the game. I think once you have that foundation, it really helps you grow, because you'll find at some point the people around you, the music business is a relationship business. So the more people who can open door, the better off you are. And really the truth is the people who have your back first are the people who know you the best and have grown up with you and who can relate to you. So if you can get these people to really, help you open those doors, they are the ones who will get you your first radio interview, your first TV, presentation, who might help a DJ play your thing. Start with that. And I really think once that is in place, little by little, the rest of the opportunities unfold. Now, that second level, the opportunities is, of course, as I was saying before, sometimes the talent is ready before the expertise, the business expertise is ready. And I think because of that, a lot of artists want to compensate by reassuring themselves and thinking they have a team of people, right? So they might have, I've met artists who have up to 4 managers and who don't make money from the music, who spend more on it than they see coming in. I don't think that's a good strategy. Maybe in some cases it is, but in general, I don't think that's a good strategy, Unless you're bringing in people who have core expertise, you're kind of better off alone. No one's going to have your back as much as you. That's the other thing. And all along your career, the more knowledge you have about how things work, the better off you are. Because you can say that you have your brother you grew up with who has your back and he's going to handle all the business decisions, but there's many cases of examples where that just doesn't work out. And at some point there's differences. And when there are, then you're kind of stuck alone. And you don't have the what's the word? You don't have the expertise to then identify someone who would be better, right? Because you never tried to learn in the first place. So I think it's key, if you have that song and it has potential, keep it close to you, share it with as many people as possible, but try to keep the decision making to you or to a very small circle of people you trust. Don't send out your manager. Just don't. Send your manager once you're able to pay your manager. If you can't pay him, you shouldn't have one. Honestly, that's how I see it. If you can't pay a manager technically is someone who makes a percentage of your revenue. So if you're making 0, that means your manager is making 0. So ask yourself, what's his incentive? Why, or he or she, why is she going to do a good job? I would start saying it's tough being a producer in Ghana in 2017, What I've always, I'm a DJ and I've been into beats, as I mentioned, so I've always been into producers. For me, they are truly the backbone of the music. If you go back to 2011, 2012, Azonto came out. When people think Azonto, maybe the first person that comes to mind is Sarkodie, You Go Kill Me. But really, the guy who should be credited is Shona Music, who did the beats. Who did the beat for Sokode, who did the beat for, they're not coming to mind, but he did the beat for countless, defining Azonto tracks, right? And the guy is getting very little recognition for it. It's really a tough situation. I have no miracle advice for producers, but I would say this in general. There needs to be, I think, how can I put it? I think it's important that when you produce a song for an artist, if the artist is not willing to pay you, or if he's not paying you what you want to receive, you need to decide what else you can get out of it, right? So normally, when you create music with someone, you're creating intellectual property. And if you're the producer, that means you're entitled to part of that song belongs to you, which is not the way the market works. Usually the artist will buy the beat and then the artist owns the song. So as a producer, I think you have to ask yourself, either A, you produce a song, get paid, and it's out of your zone, and you are fine like that, it's possible. Or if you're not satisfied with what you're getting monetarily from the artist, B, get your rights out of it. So what does that mean? There's two types of rights. There's the rights associated with the recording, and there's the rights associated with the composition, like the intellectual property. The first is called master rights. The second, master is in master recording. The second is called publishing. The master, when you buy a song, you know, you're buying the master. You're not touching the composition. You're just buying the recording, right? If you like the song that's playing outside, if you want to buy that song, you just buy the recording. You don't own the song, right? So the artist doesn't have to pay the beatmaker anything. That's between, it depends what, you know, any deal between them. If the guy bought the beat and that's the end, right? He doesn't owe him anything. Same thing with a show. If you're the performer, you don't have to share anything. The publishing is very different. The publishing normally is 50% between writer and author and now I'm confusing the words, but basically between the artist and the beat maker or producer or engineer, right? So normally you're entitled to 50% of the song. So what happens is, of course, no one registers, or it's very rare that the artist or the producers register the songs, but I think it's very important that the producers start doing so. Especially when I understand that it could be a challenge if the artist is big and maybe, you know, has more bargaining power, then maybe you can't. But if someone's begging you, oh, Charlie Habig, like, dash me the beat, you know, then say, okay, just sign here. And you're not signing for some crazy stuff. You're just signing to say that the artist recognizes that 50% of the intellectual property belongs to the beat maker. Once you have that, and once you notice that your songs are getting airplay, you can then register your songs and receive money for it. So of course, I make it sound easy. It's not quite that easy. In Ghana, royalty collection is not super functional. So if you're a beat maker and you're trying to get money because your songs are on the radio, I don't know what to advise. I don't know. My impression is it doesn't work too well. But let's say you produce a song for a big artist and his song is playing in London. There's money waiting for you in London. Literally, there's just waiting for you. If no one claims it, no one gets it. So the way to register, in the UK, in the case, I mentioned London because that's the #1 place likely to play Ghanaian music. The collection society there is called PRS. I imagine their website is prs.org, but I'm not sure. If you Google PRS, you'll find it very easily. Just, you know, read through it. If you've never looked at, you know, publishing, you will not understand anything. But I would not see that as a bad thing, but as an opportunity for you to learn. Because if you go to the PRS website and you basically go through the process of signing up, at every stage, any word you don't understand, just Google it. You know, if you can understand the process of signing up with PRS, and you can, I mean, the information's out there online, you're in a good place, you know, you're really in a good place. But I can explain the basics of it. The idea of the composition is, anytime your song is played, if you have written the song, there's money that is collected for you. So if you're a radio station, at the end of the year, the radio station will pay X amount of pounds or dollars or euros to this collection, to this collecting society, which will then divide it among all the people who are members, right? Depending on how many times they played on the radio, how many shows they've had, how many times they've been on TV, etc. Any appearance, any play of your song, there's money to be collected. Of course, if you look at it individually, every play is peanuts. If your song plays once on a small radio, then, I mean, don't even bother to sign up. It's just not worth it. But if you see that maybe some top DJ on BBC One or some big radio station plays your song, let's say 3 times a week, every week for 3 months, you should register because, you know, it might be a few £100 waiting for you. You know, that's like a few, you know, 1, 2, 3,000 CDs, like more than probably most artists pay for a beat. So again, I would say that's really a side that very few people are doing, but, you know, educate yourself, just try it. You know, a lot of this information is online. So to collect your money, it's the sad reality is it's not that straightforward, right? So let's say you notice your songs are playing a lot on the radio stations and you then register with PRS. Normally, in a perfect system, yes, you get paid for the songs that, even if they played in the past, you should still receive them. Depending on the country, it goes back, a certain period. I don't know. I think some countries it's 3 years. It really depends. I don't know. It's on the websites, but yes, it's possible. However, here's the reality of it. Imagine an office, right, whose job it is to make sure that tens of thousands of artists are getting paid from tens of thousands of sources. You can quickly imagine the chaos it is, and you can quickly understand why the truth is most people don't get paid for most of what they are due. It just, those systems are, and this is a whole other conversation, but basically, the same way I was saying the talent is far beyond the expertise, it's the same. Technology is far beyond the way the industry works. And the industry is not modern. It should be automatic. Like, if I play a song on Spotify or Apple Music, the thousand, you know, the 0.0001 cents that, you know, is entitled to, so they say, Mr. Easy, if I listen to his song, will be accounted for and paid to. But in the case of publishing, it should be the same, but it's not there yet. So it's still kind of by hand, and it's still not so precise. So to go back to, you know, you're a producer, you're an artist, you want to make it, what do? Keep track as much as possible. You know, find a system that works for you, but try to keep track of anywhere, anyone who plays your music. Have a list somewhere. You know, any radio station, any show. Like if you did a beat for Sarkodie, and Sarkodie is playing O2 Arena in London, find a way to know if you played your song, you know? I know it's tricky, but that's what pays off. It's just be that annoying guy who, Charlie, did you know, insist. The more information you have about when, where your songs were played, the more likely you are to get paid for it. Once you've collected information about your songs, you should be able to send it to PRS, right? But PRS, as I said, imagine a society who's responsible for collecting money for thousands of people. You know, sometimes they don't get back to you. So think to yourself, how can I improve my chances of getting a reply? And that breaks down to you providing the information as clearly, succinctly as possible, you know? Just make sure it's clear, it's professional, provide links, maybe organize it in a spreadsheet. Just do it in a format that the person cannot say, like, oh, you know, it wasn't clear. Like, we know, it's crystal clear. I know, tac, 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 tac. Then it's their job, you know? Maybe they won't reply the first time, but just insist, insist, insist. Be professional, you know? And I can't stress that enough. It's something I've brought up in other talks and other times. In everything you do, and any time you're trying to get something from someone, you have to be professional, you know? When you send an email to someone at PRS, think to yourself, the guy's going to, imagine, okay, look at your WhatsApp. Let's say you're in some groups and you receive 300 messages per day. Ask yourself, why will you answer one person more than the other? If the person basically asks well and it goes straight to the point, polite, you know, professional, polite, and direct, you're more likely to reply, right? Whereas the guy is wasting time, or maybe you don't even understand what he's trying to say, like, you're just going to, you know, wait till later. So follow those guidelines, you know, when you contact these big institutions that basically have very little time, think to yourself, the guy has 3 seconds for me, you know, so if I need the first 3 seconds when he opens my email, I have to make sure I get his attention, and then you can unfold, you know. So of course, those things, again, it's trial and error, it's experience. I understand that, you know, if it's the first time you make a song, it's a lot to digest all at once, and, you know, realistically it takes time, but build those skills, you know. Being a successful artist or a successful producer is not only singing or making beats, it's also handling your business, you know, knowing how do you talk to people, how do you get what you need to get from your people. And those are serious skills. And yes, you can have a manager, but I think first you need to some extent, master those skills on your own. So if you want to bring your music outside, to kind of simplify, I feel there's 2 avenues. Let's say you're a mainstream artist. If you're a mainstream artist, right now the way it works, your opportunities will come to you automatically from abroad the same way they come from here. So let's say, I remember I was working with Joy B around the time he put out Tonga. He became instantly high demand, right? Everyone wanted him. And the same way he started to get shows abroad, without really looking for them, it just came to him, right? But that's if you already have success. If you don't have success, how do you go about it? I think one thing that artists are not always aware of is that I feel that the music market here, in a way, is not uniform, but let's say there's a broad general sound, current sound, and there's not so many genres, right? Even though there are genres, maybe someone is a hip hop head, and maybe someone is a dancehall head, maybe someone is a reggae head, maybe someone is gospel, but I feel like a lot of this music is still bunched together, right? And you still have kind of this Afrobeat sound, right? Once you take your music outside, that's not true anymore. You know, there's radio stations that play rock and roll. There's radio stations that play hip hop. There's clubs that only play techno. You know, and there is a market for everything out there, right? It might be small, it might be big. For instance, I work with a duo, Mabisi, right? One guy plays the kologo, Steve Watambire. Kologo is a northern two-string instrument. The other one is Art Melody, a rapper from Burkina Faso. They're not big yet in their own countries, right? Steve is not a star in Ghana. Art Melody is not a star in Burkina. Yet, there is an audience for them in Europe that they are able to monetize, or we are able, because that's where I come in, right? So we found pockets of people who are interested in this idea of, you know, so it's at the junction between hip-hop, social commentary, and some form of African tradition or, you know, traditional instruments, right? So it exists. So then the question is, how do you reach these people? Again, I think the first step is educating yourself, figuring out, okay, so this is what I sound like. Who's out there doing something similar, you know? And start to observe from what they do. Be like, okay, let's say you play the korogo, but you're not able to get it, you know, you don't know where to start. So say, okay, who's the biggest korogo guy? King Aisoba. Okay, let's see. Who's playing King? So just Google. You know, you have to learn how to master Google. Google is your best friend. Google King Aisoba, radio, playlist, festival, whatever it is you're trying to find out. See, where is he playing? Who's supporting him? Where are the artists he performs with? And then start reaching out. And again, reach out in a polite, professional, and short, succinct way, right? I mean, that's how I started. When I started Akwaaba Music, my label, I had no idea. Like, I just believed, I was like, this music is great. There's an audience. I didn't know who they were, right? So I started to look, I'm like, okay, it sounds kind of like dancehall. So maybe a radio show that plays dancehall might play Hip Life. So I started to contact, you know, dancehall radio shows. In the case of Joa, Joa is more electronic, right? So I'm like, wow, it's kind of like Kuduro. So let's see, who are the DJs right now still playing Kuduro or playing, you know, reach out to these people, you know, make sure it's relevant and mention it to them. Say, hey, if you're emailing someone, say, hey, I noticed you wrote about so-and-so, so I think you'll appreciate my music. I mean, I see when I receive an email, I am 10 times more likely to reply than if someone says, I can tell it's a copy and paste email saying, hi, my name is da-da-da, and I make this music, and I think you're really going to love it because I put my heart into it. I'm like, no, not necessarily. Like, maybe I like it, maybe I don't, but you don't, you know, so I don't believe in sending out, you know, I know some people will buy, like, lists of 10,000 emails and just blast. I don't believe in that. Really don't. Most of it is just trash. It's just noise. I mean, I get emails like that every day. Honestly, I don't even open them anymore. I just don't have time, you know? But if someone mentions keywords that make sense to me, like say, oh, I like this, I like that, I sound like this guy, I'm doing that, then, you know, I'm much more likely to reply. So I think no matter how isolated you think you are, there are people out there who would appreciate your music. You just need to find out who they are. And obviously, start small, you know? A person with 100 Twitter followers is more likely to reply than the one with 1 million. So kind of build it up, you know? Yes, my name is Benjamin Lebrave, aka DJ BeatPhreaks. I run a label called Akwaaba Music. I've been doing it for, I think, 9 years, and 6 of those years I've been based here in Accra, Ghana.
Oh, bo, babo, oh, babo. Anos, 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 ami, anos, 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 ami, hanif, hami, hesnos, hep, oh, menos, oh, babo,